Now, some of these aquariums have got automatic water change systems, and especially for a saltwater tank, I'm really against automatic water change systems because some of these systems are set up so you can just turn taps and change water, but I'm totally against taking the good water off the top. Every time that I do a water change, I'm wanting to use a gravel cleaner and I'm wanting to pull all the crappy water out of the back. That way you're going to get all the dirt out and put clean water in. That's going to be much more value than just taking good water off the top and then putting good water back in again. So I'm not a fan of any of these automatic water changes for a reef aquarium. The thing to be aware of too is that when you've got medias like Marine Pure that offer parallel denitrification, putting other media in sometimes is a disadvantage, because some of these other medias that claim to have denitrification but basically don't, mean that your nitrate levels may actually be elevated by the addition of the extra media. So as far as biological media is concerned, it's not always the case that more is better. If you were going to have heaps and heaps of fish in the aquarium, you could really say that more is better. But if you're going to have a reef aquarium with a limited amount of fish fed on high quality foods that are not too dirty, then I would rather have less good quality media, which is going to offer parallel denitrification, such as the real Marine Pure, and then most of your fake Marine Pure products or other products that claim to offer denitrification typically don't, in my experience. So there has been many times when I've stripped out media that I don't need in the filter and actually got better results, especially in reference to nitrate levels. But if we're dosing anti-nitrate products, all that would probably happen is we'll just use a little bit more no-pox. So it's not really the end of the world, but in principle, I'm not a fan of over-biologically filtering tanks that don't need it, especially for reef tanks. Sometimes less is more. With all these new lights these days, all of the timer systems that you get through the apps are absolutely fabulous. You can set them for what's going on with your aquarium, but basically at the start, if there's not a lot of coral in the aquarium, you would keep the light relatively minimal, because increased light is going to increase your algae. On the other hand, it's really important that you set these up so you're getting enough light, but then on the other hand, not too much. So if you had, for say, about 6 to 8 hours of full light, and then 8 to 12 hours of total light, as in ramp up and ramp down, that usually works out pretty well. And if you're getting too much algae in the aquarium, you certainly can consider backing off the light. But having the light set on timers is of real value because that allows consistency. The main thing we're trying to do with a reef aquarium is create consistency. And that's why things like dosing pumps are really, really important. It's really important that you don't try to run your reef tank on manual additions, because you're never going to get them accurately enough. And also sometimes you just don't have time to commit to your aquarium like you do other times. So trying to automate your tank as much as possible, or as much as practical, will give you much more stable results. You also got to make sure you don't forget things like, for example, forget to fill up your containers for your dosing. Don't forget to replace your UV tube once a year. Make sure that you're cleaning your skimmer twice a week. Make sure that you're replacing your filter wall when you see it's dirty. And then I'm a big fan of polyfilter. I just love polyfilter, removing any accumulants that I might have in the tank. So one of the main things I'm looking for with the reef aquarium is surface agitation. So I really need this surface to all be well broken, which it is right now. Now, the way that the water flow is going at the moment, everything's going that way. Now, that means we're probably going to have quite good kinetic energy. Now, what kinetic energy is where you use the movement of the water to create the movement of the water. And looking at this right now, I'm actually pretty happy with the way this is flowing. It all looks like it's flowing very well. Now, the next thing we need to do is be aware of your different corals and where they position. And so understanding what your coral should look like is very important. And then just understanding that basically some areas in the tank are going to have more flow than other areas in the tank. So this tank is going to have very predictable flow, because right now all of the flow is aiming that way. And it actually looks pretty good right now. It looks like we've got quite good flow. So that's going to be ripping around like this. Now, what we don't have right now is countercurrents. And countercurrents are basically where something's aiming that way and something's aiming that way. That way you're using energy to cancel out energy. So that's not occurring here right now. All of our flow is going that way. So that way all the flow is working with itself. So therefore we're going to be enjoying kinetic energy. So these wave pumps can do all sorts of fancy things with turning the flow up and down and all that sort of stuff. And I'm a big fan of using those sorts of facilities. And then basically you place the coral in the aquarium, and if it's moving the way you think it should move and it looks happy, that's great. Give it a few weeks to judge it. Then over time, if it's not moving enough, you might need to move it to a position where it's getting more flow. Or on the other hand, if it's doing these ones, then you might need to move it to a position where it's getting less flow. So one thing I highly recommend is that when you do come down to the shop, make yourself a really nice video. Make sure we can see everything going on. That way we could advise you on what corals to move if we see that some of the corals are getting too much flow or not enough flow, or too much light or not enough light. And ultimately, at the end of the day, your corals want to grow. And that your corals only really die for two reasons. Your corals die because they got too much of something or not enough of something. So it's either too much light or not enough light, or too much flow or not enough flow, or too much nutrients or not enough nutrients, or even not enough space around each other. So the aquarium is all about balance, and understanding the balance is really the key to having a beautiful aquarium. And then don't accept anything that's going on in the aquarium if you don't understand it. If you don't understand it, let us know. Now you'll also notice the way that we've set the corals up. We've tried to create lots of photosynthetic surface area, and we've tried to minimize the points in which the rocks are touching the substrate. And the reason why we did that is we've got all these lovely caves and crevices where your scavengers are going to get in there and scavenge, and we've got less touching the bottom, because under the bottom is where all your crap's going to build up. So we try to minimize how much we're touching the substrate, which has worked very well in this case. And where you start is not where you finish. So don't be afraid to evolve your rocks, evolve your setup, and don't be afraid to change things around over time. How you start is not how you finish.